Hello and welcome to The Business. I'm Victoria Scott with the show that's essential listening for the West Herts business community. Tonight it's all about the art of selling. Is it something you can learn? Why are some people such naturals and others either hopeless or just too pushy? Why does selling have such a poor reputation in the UK when it's hugely respected skill everywhere else, from the USA to the Middle and the Far East? Well, we've got an interview with an expert in sales training who's currently teaching the buyers of some of our largest retailers some of the skills that will help them improve from their side of things. We have Thomas Hamlin-Williams, the MD of Bhowmick, a sales and marketing consultancy, who have particular expertise in sponsorship management. And we also went out and about, as usual, to talk to some of the business sectors who have historically had the worst reputations in the sales arena. That'll be the estate agents and the second-hand car dealers. So just for once, this time and this evening, we're going to hear their side of the story. And of course, our trusty team is here this week in the form of Roma Bhowmick and Trevor Merriden. Good evening to you both. How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
So, Roma, what's caught the news, the business news for you in this week?
Well, can you believe it? Apparently, setting up your own business is actually not just potentially good for your pocket, but also good for your health. I came across a recent survey of about 4,000, no, not about, it was actually 4,000 solo workers and entrepreneurs who were interviewed about their experiences of working at home. 43% said that working from home makes their relationship with their partner or spouse better, and only 14% of people said that their relationship suffered as a result of their changed style of working. So I guess they're the ones that kind of stay in their offices far too long, late at night and first thing in the morning. The majority, over 50%, listed improved work-life balance as the main benefit of working for themselves, with over 22% saying they were very pleased that they were able to spend more time in bed. Love it. Ha, ha, ha. On another point, the second best thing about being a freelancer apparently was avoiding office politics, which makes sense because you can't really have an argument with yourself.
Oh, I don't know, but you might be able to have an argument with your spouse.
Well,
that's
true.
At home.
and I guess if they're in your office, that's office politics. So yes, 25% of those that responded also said being able to be there for their children was also what they considered was as an advantage of working solo or working freelance from home, which makes sense to me. I've done that. It's been very useful.
Yes, well, I think it's about working when you feel like working, when you're in the mood for working, and actually being able to go and watch that netball match or whatever it is when the time is right. So if it's a glorious day, why not go and enjoy the weather, and then when it's foul weather, just do the work then.
Exactly.
I certainly do that in terms of my work-life balance.
I think the other thing about it that's interesting, I guess, is it's great to have all that time for yourself, but I suppose one of the other biggest issues for me was finding that I was a bit lonely. Yeah. I like having people to banter with. Oh no, I like to be bantering with someone.
I think it's quite interesting because I think that women tend to, and certainly in my experience, they tend to get on better and work better at home and be able to work
juggle.
better at home. And a lot of the guys just didn't find it worked for them.
Yeah.
I think the call of the sport on telly was probably too great or something like that. I don't know.
Yes,
How about you,
do you
Trevor?
watch the golf one or the cricket?
What's been going on for you?
For me, I saw a really interesting story about the Bank of England say lending to small and medium-sized businesses under the government's funding for lending scheme actually fell this year. Now, the FLS is meant to help banks release loans cheaply, mainly to SMEs, for those who had reported difficulty in securing funds. But the bank says that lending fell by £2.7 billion in the first quarter of 2014, with SMEs seeing lending fall by nearly £750 million. But isn't it the firms, I'm wondering, who don't want the banks now? The figures say that the firms are keener to pay back than build up debt.
Yeah.
Now, fewer than 1 in 10 businesses are actually saying they viewed access to finance as a major barrier to growth and success. There's not everybody agrees. The British Chamber of Commerce says that many businesses find banks will not lend to them, and John Longworth, who's the Director General there, says although more established firms have little difficulty in accessing the finance, the litmus test has always been whether young and fast-growing businesses are able to get the finance they need. But it seems, personally, I think there's perhaps been a bit of a sea change in thinking. I don't know what you think, guys, that businesses perhaps just don't trust banks after the recession. Now, it's the banks that are struggling to win back that trust, although they do now are under pressure by the government to actually lend stuff. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this one so many times before, haven't we? This old chestnut of businesses feeling banks aren't lending enough. And we've also said, well, there's two ways of looking at it. If a business needs to take a loan, why are they taking that loan? If it's to fund the sort of going the extra mile to increase the rate at which that business grows, then okay, maybe that's a good idea. If it's to keep it going, you have to ask the question, should they be going out to borrow more money? Yes. After all, if they can't cope, why are they asking for more money from someone?
Yes, I think it's an interesting question. I've just completed some research which hasn't been published yet, but is due to come out. We have some sort of early call, and what we're looking at is that compared to year on year, actually only 10% of the businesses that we interviewed had even tried to raise finances this year, compared to 17% last year. And this is across the whole of the SME market. And in actual fact, 49%, nearly 50% are saying that they would be raising the finance to develop business or expand into new and additional markets and premises.
Okay.
So the number of businesses that are trying to raise money is smaller, but they're trying to raise it for the right reasons.
Yes, the right reasons,
But interestingly enough, most of the ones that we would consider to be I suppose better placed, more likely to get the right sort of finance, are not going to the banks. Right. They're going to different types of funding because the banks are just giving them money and nothing else. And what most of these entrepreneurial businesses are looking for is additional support, additional mentoring, additional help, all of those sorts of things. So it's more than just the money.
Yeah, we've seen the crowdfunding increase, haven't we? Yeah. And again, it's interesting. It would be interesting actually to see what percentage of those companies that are not going for formal lending are going to crowdfunding with a proposition. And again, as we've talked about previously, and I know we're looking at selling today, that if you are effective in communicating what you're trying to do, and people buy into it, then crowdfunding is a particularly good option. It's a good way of getting feedback on your idea.
Yeah, and also, but what about those who maybe once went to the bank but could have gone to crowdfunding, but maybe have just decided not to bother at all? Just to stock up the cash and. I don't know. It'd be really interesting to see that. Yeah.
Work a bit smarter.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, just to draw us back to the topic of the evening, the art of selling, which is we're going to be starting to look into a bit of depth in a moment. But I just wanted to sort of kick off from my sort of learning. I mentioned the research that I'd just completed, and what was really interesting in that was that there's always a lack of skills in business. And for the first time since we've been doing this research, the 17% of all respondents rated marketing and sales as the highest area where they're lacking skills this year. It's come to the top for the first time. In the past, it's been management of finance has tended to be at the top. And this year, it's marketing and sales skills. So we've got to... our show is coming at absolutely the right time. We're going to hear from some very, very talented people. But if you've got anything that you'd like to say, if you've got any thoughts, any views on anything that you'd like to discuss as regards sales, marketing, or any aspect of business, we really want to hear your views. So do get in touch. You can call us on 01727 839 926. Tweet at RVTheBusiness and we'll pick that up. Or email us at thebusiness@radioverulam.com. We're just going to have a short break now and we'll be back shortly with our first interview of the evening.
If you want to know what's going on in St Albans and West Herts, then join Telegraph journalist Louisa Peacock as she debates the local current affairs and news of the week with live guests every Tuesday from 7 p.m. right here on 92.6 FM Radio Verulam. Tweet along with the show at RV Outspoken or at Louisa Peacock. Outspoken, Radio Verulam's local news and current affairs show with Louisa Peacock, Tuesdays 7 p.m. right here on 92.6 FM Radio Verulam.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
So I'd like to welcome into the studio Thomas Hamlin-Williams, who is MD of Sales and Marketing Consultancy Umi. So over to you, Roma, for tonight's first interview.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay, so Thomas, maybe you could start by giving us a bit of background to yourself.
Well, I have a background in sports sales and marketing, so I've worked at various levels in professional sport, both for clubs and national governing bodies, selling sponsorship tickets and anything else associated with with those products.
Okay, so then how did Umi come about? What prompted you to start it up?
Prompted me to start it up was the fact that I wanted to run my own business, but Victoria just said it. Businesses struggle fitting in sales and marketing into their everyday working life. So a technical specialist, such as an accountant, doesn't necessarily find sales and marketing as the most natural thing. So how Umi can fit in is we're an outsourced sales and marketing department, and we make it an awful lot easier for businesses to grow and manage that growth because we know what we're doing, and we love. I think that's one of the key points. We love selling, we love marketing, we love talking about products and pushing a lot of enthusiasm through them. And that's why Umi is as it is because, as Victoria said, lots of businesses struggle with sales and marketing.
So, bearing in mind you'll come in and work with them on how to sell themselves effectively, how to market themselves effectively, pull campaigns together for them potentially. Are you there to be a permanent outsourced feature, or is there a bit of education that goes on as well?
I think the way we work is we're a permanent feature, but has a lot of education that has to go on. As an example, accounting firms and law firms are big on this. All their solicitors and accountants are out networking, but how they network, how they talk to people, how they sell their services or not sell, as I would encourage them to do, just how they try and help people, how they try and integrate with the business community, will have a dramatic impact on the effectiveness of their networking. So I'll work with their employees on how they can network more effectively to generate more word of mouth referrals, which, to be fair, is how the majority of I would say accountancy and law firms generate more business.
So it might be stating the obvious, but you mentioned networking there. Would you say that networking's the most important sales technique, if you like, or why is networking such an important feature in sales?
Networking is such an important feature in sales because people buy from people. Networking can be lots of different things. It can be your regular BNI type networking, or it can be in a box at Wembley Stadium. What it enables you to do is build personal relationships with people, which enables you to be able to do more business together. I would say, networking in all its forms is the most is the best form of sales, without a doubt.
So, if we're talking about best form of sales or best practice, what makes, in your opinion, a good salesperson?
Enthusiasm. You have to believe in what you're selling. You have to believe in the product, and you have to have that passion has to really flow through you when you're talking about it. I think also traditional sales techniques have this running through them, but there's a relentlessness to what you have to be relentless in sales. It's a numbers game, and even if you're building relationships, it's still a numbers game. The more people you know, the more likely you are to sell your products. I think that's just a matter of fact, really.
But is it just a numbers game? Because you've just said it's about people, and so to give you a bit of a background, my career, I guess, began in sales. I was in sales for 20 years, and I would actually argue that it's not just about numbers, and the danger is companies focus on the numbers and forget that actually it's about building relationships. So how do you reconcile the two?
Well, I think it's about us building as many relationships as possible, because I think if you can get stuck and think your network's big enough, and that's what I mean by the relentlessness of it. It's not picking up the phone and selling every day. It's about you're thinking, I know 500 people. Actually, I really need to go to another networking event. I need to meet more people. And then when you're there, I think this is a thing that needs to underline all sales, is that people either know what you do, you can educate them about what you do. When you're there, and for example, if someone comes into a car sales showroom, They're there to buy a car. Now, what do you do to get them to buy the car? You help them. You do as much as you can to help them. Don't sell. They're there to buy. It's fine. You just help them and help them and help them, and then the more you help them, the more you build that relationship and that trust, the more likely they are to buy from you, and more likely they are to come back and buy their second car and third car and fourth car from you. And that's the important bit.
So am I right in understanding that what you're saying is it's about recognising what they're looking for and essentially ensuring you meet those needs first and foremost? Yeah,
I think so. I think it's, they're the basics. You have to understand what people are looking for. But I think the key for me in sales is building relationships with people, helping people. So if I go into a networking event, everyone's there to sell. Everyone's there to sell their own products. But I'll always start a conversation with, hi, how are you doing? What do you do? Or how can I help you? Who are good introductions for you? Yeah. And what a great way to start a conversation. Yeah. Because then immediately, what they're going to ask me back, how can I help you? And then suddenly you're off. Yeah. And that, for me, that's really key. And too few people do that. Yeah. So, other than people not thinking about reciprocating, what else would you consider to be a poor salesperson? Selling. Ironically. Ironically, yeah. Yeah, no, I think, you've got all these caricatures of people standing on a desk with a megaphone. Yeah. And, those days are over. I can't even imagine a world where those days actually were relevant. I'm not old enough really
Scarily, I'm old enough to remember it. The good old, there are 7 steps to a sale, as if it is process oriented.
Yeah. Well, are those days over? I mean, I would like to think they are, but it's not that long ago since I was in a publishing house where the sales team, it was all kind of raw meat, thrown into the sales team, and I know this is horrible stereotyping, but it really did feel that it was all about the numbers and it was all about push rather than consult. Well,
I think it is all about numbers. I think you can't forget that in sales. It's all about results. It's all about earning more money. Yeah. But how you go about it, I think you'll be more effective in the short, medium and long term by building relationships. I do overhear conversations in hotels when people are sales team, because they don't have any offices, they're all in the car because they all should be out knocking on doors all the time. Are meeting up and they're talking, and the things you hear are just amazing. I sat in it was awful. It was J-Press. They get you together for this exclusive advertising package that you can get in your local paper. And they stood there and they brought in this expert salesman, and they made a point of saying, we brought in this expert salesman from America. And I was like, I left halfway through because I just couldn't cope with it. I thought, well, I was there to buy advertising and I was there to spend some money, but I couldn't cope with their techniques. I thought, well, advertising in a paper is, a part of a marketing mix that probably is the least value anyway, and they're selling it to me like it's, I couldn't believe it.
So have you seen The Wolf of Wall Street, for example?
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah, I mean, when you see Leonardo DiCaprio, there's a scene where he's on the phone and he's trying to talk somebody into one of his early sales in his career. Do you despair, of that? Or actually, because in a way he's kind of high pressure, in another way he is actually trying to understand what the other person wants. He's a kind of a funny mix, isn't he?
I think actually, quite an interesting film. But to be fair, the way they go about their sales is quite, it is about building relationships, not in a good way, but in a quite a bad way. But they do build the relationships with their customers on the phone, and actually, there is, and that's what I mean by I think it's the most effective way to sell, because you can do it in a, in a bad way. You can go about it and you can just go after numbers by building relationships. You can manipulate people on the phone. You can manipulate relationships to get what you want. And comes across as a bad word, but I don't think it is. I think sales is sales. And look, there are thousands of stationery companies out there. Why do stationery companies build relationships with their customers? Well, it's so they can manipulate them to keep buying from them. And You know, I don't think that's always a bad thing, as long as they're getting good service, a good product, and at a fair and reasonable price. It works for both.
Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, this word manipulation, it's always sort of like hits a raw nerve, doesn't it? Because manipulation implies something quite negative.
Yeah.
And actually, it's interesting, Wolf of Wall Street, half of the interest in that film is that those were the days where they were not regulated, and actually regulations come about particularly because of situations like that. So, as you say, is it manipulation, or is it actually, again, back to what you said earlier about understanding that people have specific needs and actually thinking about addressing those needs, as opposed to just saying, you want to buy my product, I know you do, buy it. Yeah.
Well, I think you have to understand people's needs. You have to understand what they want. But in The Wolf of Wall Street, he says, "Sell me a pen," and you know, very clever little piece of script where he creates a need for him to need a pen. But then there are 10 people who can sell him a pen. Who's he going to buy it from? And the person who builds the strongest relationship with that person is essentially manipulating him to go and buy from them. And I think building relationships is a form of manipulation, and it's not bad. I don't think it's always needs to come across as a bad word, but you know, I enjoy being able to deliver great product. Well, yeah, I enjoy being able to get people to buy from me because I know I can give them a fantastic product back, and I do that by building good relationships and helping them. Yeah.
You also sell sponsorship packages. So how is that different, would you say, and how do you go about it?
Sponsorship is a really misunderstood product. Lots of people just think it's a waste of money. They give you money away, and where I see the difference is that sponsorship is a really unique form of marketing where you can literally get your product into people's hands, into people's hearts and minds. And it sounds all very airy-fairy, but there are so many campaigns of really hit home with people just right on their doorstep, right in their school, right on their sports pitch, where those things that they do in their leisure time mean a lot to them. And sponsorship has a massive impact. And where I want to come in is I want to help businesses spend their sponsorship budgets more effectively, and especially at the lower end. At the higher end, there are lots of big agencies like M&C Saatchi who do what they do, and that's fantastic. But there's a lower end, these sort of companies who spend anywhere between £1,000 and £100,000, where they probably don't get the service they should get, and they don't get the return on investment they should get.
Can you think of an example recently where you've worked with a client who's not worked with sponsorship before and the positive results of that? Absolutely.
There's a Haven Holidays, based in Bournemouth, based in Hemel Hempstead, were sponsoring a local club, and the reality is that they'd never done it before, and I walked them through why the sponsorship deal that Hemel Stags I set up for them could have real benefit for them. And it was really explaining, going through marketing and publicity and brand principles, and saying, well, actually, this is what sponsorship is. And I think look at my LinkedIn profile, she was quite pleased with that.
So we're coming up to the next break now, but what are the 3 top tips, would you say, for those less experienced in the art of selling than yourself?
I think the first one would be learn to love your product, learn to love what you're talking about. Nothing will sell better than enthusiasm and passion. And really, the second thing, build relationships, talk to people. The more people you talk to, the more likely you are to sell to them. And the third thing, as far as you can, when you meet someone, when you talk to someone, help them before you sell to them, because they'll often buy before you need to sell.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, we'll be right back, and we'll be speaking to Thomas again later after this short break.
Hi, this is Danny Smith. Join me weekdays from 4 till 7 p.m. for West Harts Drive Time, with features including Chris's Film Club, Pound Saver, Community Notice Board, Calendar Artist, Hot Topics and many more besides. We also feature correspondence covering topics such as lifestyle, consumer advice, cooking, interior design and travel. We have regular interviews, local news and sports, celebrity birthdays, travel and traffic updates and competitions as well. That's all on West Harts Drive Time with me, Danny Smith, on 92.6 FM, Radio Verulam.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
Well, many thanks for all your input, Tom. Really, really interesting stuff, and I hope that lots of people out there have learnt some skills and some ideas. And also, I hope you'll join the rest of the discussion. So we're going to play some clips now, and the first thing really that we want to talk about is just how difficult it is to learn the art of selling. So Clare McAnulty went to a local expert, Tony Hewitt of Scott & Hewitt. Tony started his career selling newspaper advertising, which we just mentioned earlier. And an essential part of their business plan is advertising in terms of profitability. There's obviously heavy competition between newspapers. And in 1980, Tony Hewitt was involved in the setup of the advertising sales department of the Mail on Sunday. Clare McAnulty started by asking him how the process worked.
The essence of newspaper advertising sales at that sort of level is about professional sales to professional buyers. The advertising agencies work on behalf of their clients, and we as salesmen are selling to those advertising agencies to encourage their client to use our vehicle for their advertising. It's a very competitive market. So the essence of the business is to have a really good ongoing working relationship with the agency buyers, but also to be able to tackle the clients as well, and to know them very well, so that you know exactly what it is that they're looking to do with their advertising and their marketing, and how you filtered into their marketing requirements was really important, because that would then give you the edge when dealing with the negotiations with the agencies.
Do you think that what you were doing was a learnable skill, that people could be taught to do what you were doing, or do you think that some people are just naturally good at that type of selling?
Well, the answer to that is both is true. Some people are very naturally able to sell. It comes very easily. Some people find it more difficult. But yes, there are skills that you can develop. There are definite techniques and definite approaches and definite skill sets that you can learn. And actually, it's an ongoing business. It's the ongoing training that we did at the Mail on Sunday was very, very important to our success. You're really only as good as your last sale, and unless you're improving your techniques all the time, you can't compete with the people that you're working with. You can't compete with the opposition. You can't compete with the people that you're selling to, because all the time their skill sets are improving and enhancing. So you've got to keep abreast of that and keep very up to date.
You're now working for yourself, Tony, and you're currently training buyers of large retailers. So you're teaching them how to deal with the type of seller you used to be on the Mail on Sunday. So I guess you're a poacher turned gamekeeper. In what way does your experience then help them?
Let me approach that firstly by talking about the poacher turned gamekeeper role, because that's exactly what it is, but there's an essential sense to it which makes it work. The essence of selling is really very simple. It's finding out what somebody wants, and if you've got it, giving it to them at a price, obviously, which makes sense to you. The essence of buying is the other end of that ruler. It's finding out what somebody has, and if you want it, buying it at a price that works for you. So the two things are have a huge amount in common. They're the opposite ends of the same spectrum. So buyers teaching buyers to be better buyers, for me, doesn't make sense. It's far, far better that the people who have the technique to make their buying operation more difficult, i.e. the salesman, should be the people who are helping to train them and improve their technique.
One of the things I think that a lot of business people have a problem with, particularly when you're inexperienced at selling, is establishing the price. It's one of those difficult areas. I mean, what do you think is the best way of dealing with that?
For both a professional salesman and a professional buyer, money is the last thing you talk about. Essentially, what you're trying to do is establish need and value. And the establishment of need and value is what then takes you forward to that final price negotiation. And the price negotiation, once you've understood need and value, is the thing which gives you your margin and also gives the person that you're buying from their margin, the thing that's essential to both of you carrying on with their business. So price is the last thing in a sale, not the first thing in a sale. If somebody's talking price as an opening gambit, then what they haven't done is establish need, and until you establish need and value, you can't possibly establish price. All you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot.
And if we move on to talking about relationships now between buyers and sellers, do you think that really you should start off with it in mind that these are going to be long-term?
Yeah. The whole essence of professional selling and professional buying is long-term relationships. It has to be that because, clearly you're going back to the same people to buy variations on the same product over a long period of time. And if you have a real understanding and a real knowledge of the person that you're dealing with, and frankly, if you get on with them well, it helps enormously because it takes you through the process that much more quickly. It cuts out the nonsense in the first place of establishing where you both stand, and you know where you're starting from, and you know how you can develop that. You have in mind what you need to achieve, but you also have in mind what they need to achieve, and actually understanding what they want as well as knowing what you want is a really important part in that process of negotiation and of coming to a final price which works for both of you.
If there were 3 top tips that you could give to a business owner who's not an experienced salesman but is trying to improve, what would they be?
There is only one tip: buy in advice from outside. It doesn't have to be hugely expensive, it doesn't have to be long term, but a couple of hours with a really, really established trainer will do much, much more good and much more quickly than bailing around and not really knowing what you're doing. There are some really, really straightforward and simple techniques which people can pick up very quickly, which will turn them from being frankly useless into being really effective. And it doesn't need to be costly. Literally go onto the internet and look around and find somebody. If you're going to bring in trainers, find people who you get on with, find people who you feel an affinity with, because that personal fit is really, really important. And they should be coming in demonstrating their sales skills. The most important thing they should be doing when they come in and talk to you about the operation, in exactly the same way as I've discussed before, is establishing need. They need to find out what it is that you need and what it is that you want. So you can establish very quickly whether they're any good or not simply by sitting there and listening to the process that they go through when they're trying to evaluate your requirements. The short answer is get expert training.
Well, lots of food for thought there, and we'll come back and discuss as a group all those comments that Tony Hewitt said after this very short break.
Hi, I'm Kathy Weston.
And I'm Lydia L. Curry.
Join us every Thursday evening on The Parent Show for expert interviews, local information about caring for children in West Harts,
and a What's On guide you just can't afford to miss. We're here every Thursday between 8 and 9 p.m. on Radio Verulam 92.6 FM.
Don't forget to tune in!
If you want to get in touch with the business on Radio Verulam, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.
Welcome back to the business. It's about 25 minutes to the hour now. Now that was interesting stuff, wasn't it? From Tony Hewitt of Scott and Hewitt. Certain things kind of came across to me. I just wonder what you thought about it, guys. He said price is the last thing that you should talk about. Do we agree with that?
You got any thoughts, Thomas?
Oh, I don't know. I think what came across for me was the thing about relationships. I suppose once you build your relationship, price doesn't really matter because you know who you're buying from. So I have suppliers, and whether it's about a good thing or a bad thing, when they tell me a price, I'm like, that's fine. Just order it. It's fine because I know them. I trust them. We've got a good relationship, and. But no, to be fair, I always make quite clear what my prices are, just so people understand what's, what I suppose what they're in for. But I always, talk about investment rather than price, because I think, when you're buying in, which people do from me, buying sales and marketing support, you are investing in your business, and I always make that point very clear.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think you're probably agreeing with what Tony said, in the sense that there's no point in starting to talk price unless you have already got a relationship established.
Exactly.
You've got to understand what it is that the person is wanting. You've got to understand what they need, what bits they might like, before you can start talking price. Because actually, you've got no idea what the price might be because you don't know what it is that you're selling. So how can you go in with price? And it's always a mistake. And I think working with very small businesses, quite often, people get wrapped up in price. And what they do is they mention the price, and then when the other person doesn't bite their hand off, the next thing that they do is reduce the price.
Yeah.
And actually, they've just gone in at the wrong time with the price. And it's not that the price is wrong. It's just that they haven't established the needs, they haven't established the wants, they haven't established the parameters. And so they've gone in with the price and then they've reduced it. And all of that, it's just the wrong way of going about it.
Let me sort of put another thing then. Put it in another way, that you're dealing with somebody who you might suspect might be, for want of a better expression, a bit of a time waster. Actually might not have the budget, might just be looking around the showroom but has no intention of buying. You could build up a good relationship with that person, but actually the price, could you not say it's a mechanism, if you do mention it, to actually cut short that conversation and actually flush out whether that person's really interested?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that. And I kind of see it from both sides of the coin, as it were. I think from your perspective as the salesperson, absolutely. I think it's a way of establishing very quickly whether or not the relationship's right to have, because after all, should you be discounting? I'm a great believer in not discounting. If you've got a valuable service, why should you discount? I think from the customer's perspective, there's this great old adage of you get what you pay for. And so again, if you're going to start bargaining down, then I think the danger is you have to be aware that the service might suffer too. I used to say to clients, when they were the sort of client that would bargain like hell, my answer would be, well, what part of the service would you like me to take away? I can do that for you. We can reduce it, and that way we reduce the price. And of course, the answer was always, I don't want any of it taken away. So then we'd start to re-establish, well, what are you actually paying for? So I think it's this value proposition on both sides of the coin.
Yeah. I had a really interesting example very early on in my my non-corporate career when I was talking to some people. Their business really wasn't big enough to be able to afford me, and I could see that from a mile away. And actually we sat down and I gave them sort of like an hour or so's just sort of free mentoring. And I said, really, you can't, your business can't afford to take on somebody like me. It just can't. And what was quite interesting was putting it like that. What they did was they said, so how can we afford some of you? And then what we did was we came up with an alternative way of working with them that satisfied me, satisfied my prices that they could afford over a period of time. Right. So even then, I'd established my value with them to the point where they really wanted it, even though they couldn't afford it. Yeah. And then we figured out a way of doing it. Yeah. So even in that circumstance, it wasn't flushing them out. It was actually flushing out a reason to do business. If you come across somebody you don't want to do business with, then you don't ever get to price. Just walk away. Think.
The thing is, what I find with that is, and you can see them a mile off. Absolutely, I walk into a room and I'll know who's there to shark around a room selling, and I know who's there to actually talk and build relationships and all those sort of things. And when I have a meeting with someone, I'll know that they're not they're not in the market for my product. But the way I approach it slightly differently is I always say, well, I always help them. I'll always have that one-to-one. I'll always give them the value of my expertise. And then when they go and talk about me, they'll talk about me in a positive light. And there's nothing more powerful than people saying, look, you sat down with me, for an hour, talked through my business, helped me really knows, and they'll talk about you because they know they can't afford you. They know in their heart of hearts they know they've wasted your time, and they'll go and talk about you in a really positive light. And there's nothing more powerful than having 50 odd people around singing your praises, and then you will get the contract you want.
I think you're absolutely right, and that sort of generosity marketing, which I think is something that I talk to my clients a lot about. Now, you mentioned a word there which is a perfect cue for our next clip. You mentioned the word sharks. And we've got 2 clips coming up now. I didn't think it was possible to do a show on selling without talking to some of the people that we historically consider to be some of the hardest salesmen in the land, the estate agents and the second-hand car dealers. So I went out and sought a few out to find out what their side of the story was. Right, I'm with Ken Whitaker of John Curtis. Estate agents have a terrible reputation in the UK for being dodgy salesmen. Now, this is your chance, Ken, to put the record straight. What did John Curtis do to make sure that you're not seen as dodgy?
Well, I think predominantly we try to be very different from the archetypal estate agent. I think the reputation the business has, in a lot of cases, is justified, because you can come out of college or school, work for Connells or someone else, the corporate firms, from day one, and be out valuing houses and getting it wrong. So we believe in staff training. We also believe that the staff should not be pushed too hard to achieve targets that compromises either our or their moral compass. And there's a very fine line between getting that right and wrong. And Mr. Curtis, who sold us the business, told us years ago that we're bigger than one deal, and if it means that you have to say no to a deal but protect the brand's image locally, then that's the right thing to do. So yeah, it's about being different, being honest where you can be, and doing what's best for your client.
So what would make you turn down a deal?
So for example, I had a case last week whereby we're selling a piece of land, and it had come to light that we knew there was an offer ongoing via another agent for the last couple of years on the piece of land. They'd spent a fortune getting to that stage, and we just didn't feel comfortable in marketing the piece of land, knowing full well that it could undo someone's work for the last couple of years for an extra gain for the client who had not been honest with us at the outset. So as well as us doing the right thing, we'd like our clients to likewise be honest with us. That client wasn't, so we declined the business.
That's really interesting, because that's a sort of, I'm not going to say honour among thieves, but that sort of thing where actually working together as an industry helps the reputation of an industry.
Yeah.
So why do you think in the UK that selling generally, not just at estate agents and journalists and second-hand car dealers, but why do you think that selling has such a bad reputation? When in somewhere like the States or Far East, Middle East, it's a highly, highly regarded industry.
Yeah, I think it goes back a lot of it to the lack of training. So in the States, there are qualifications in sales and marketing that most car salesmen, they call them realtors in the States, they have to go through. So if I was to try and do my job in, for example, Florida, I'd have to go to, in essence, college, night school for a couple of years, get accreditation to be able to do that. In the UK, of course, you can just walk into a job and pitch a business on day one. So it's a huge difference. Is the training, the mindset of being professional. I think in the UK, that famous saying, "If all else fails, turn to sales."
Yeah.
I hate that saying.
Yeah.
But actually, you can see why, because kind of you just led in from day one, in at the deep end, and off you go. And without the right training in any job, you're going to get it wrong.
Yeah, so it's interesting that. So it becomes almost a profession as opposed to just anything you can do, walking off the street and do it.
Yeah, very
so
much.
How do you go about training your team? Do you train through with external people or internal?
Yeah, nothing's in-house. So
right.
When we employ someone, we look for skill sets that we can't train in a sales environment. So for us, it's desire, it's hunger, the ability to get on in life, the things that you can't teach anyone. You've either got it or you haven't.
Yeah.
And you can tell within the first hour of meeting someone whether they are the right sort of person for your business. So once they're on board, we teach them the John Curtis way about being a bit different, pushy but not too pushy, because it's a sales job after all. But thereafter, we outsource all the training to London-based firms, because we're not good at that. It's not what we do. We sell houses and land and let them as well. Sales training we pay handsomely for. We invest heavily in it, but we expect our staff to improve their performance during those sales courses.
You mentioned the word pushy. How can you do pushy and still be trusted?
Well, I think there's a fine line. So we had a case last week with my young negotiator who's worked with us for 6 months now, where beautiful house, great garden, every agent's dream. The family had invited out, I think it was either 9 or 10 firms, and we had all pitched for the business. And I said to my young negotiator, well, look, give it a chase the following week. Talk to the family. Was a report, did it make sense? How did it compare the valuation of other firms? Ask when they're going to market the house, and leave it at that. Whereas most of the corporate firms would chase that client probably daily for 3, 4, 5 days until the client told them to politely go away. Yeah, quite. Yeah. So I think it's a balance.
It's keeping the energy and the enthusiasm without harassing, basically.
Yeah. And it's the worst thing. And we always say to our staff, don't harass clients. Give them the advice. They've invited you out. Give them the advice. Drop the report off. Chase once on the phone. If it goes well, you can ask them to chase again in a week or so's time. Great. But if not, don't just leave message after message, because it is tantamount harassing, and it's just not our style at all. We're salesy, but we're soft salesy.
And what makes John Curtis so different beyond that not harassing, not being on mega targets, not being too pushy, etc.?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, that word used, that professionalism. We are all proud to be estate agents. We don't hide behind, we're surveyors or we're estate agents, and the way we conduct our business, most of it comes from recommendation, and we have a real pride in what we do. We've grown the business in the last 10 years hugely. So, it's trying to kind of almost, when you see clients, prove to them that you are different. They're going to have probably 3 or 4 opinions at least, and you want to stand out for the right reasons. So you're not the bloke in the loud suit, the black shirt, the silver tie, the pointy shoe, all that sort of stuff.
Sounds a monster.
It's all that. So again, it's about having a pride in what you do and portraying to your clients that actually breaking that myth of the archetypal estate agent.
Well, you've certainly broken the myth for me. If people want to sell a house in West Herts and they're listening tonight, how do they get in touch with you, Ken?
www.johncurtis.co.uk. It's all online.
That was Ken Whitaker, MD of John Curtis Estate Agents. I love that line. We're salesy, but we're soft salesy. that was lovely. He seemed like a very nice estate agent, I thought. One thing though he said that I wasn't too sure about, and I wonder what you guys thought, is that he said you've either got it or you haven't, and yet we have appeared to have been talking with Tony about the need for training and the need for outside assistance. They get outside help. It must be a learnable skill to a great extent. Some of the people I know who reckon they're not very good at sales actually sell through their knowledge. They don't actually think of themselves as salespeople, but really they are. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's just very very interesting to listen to the interview. I love being able to either be the person going in after doing a pitch, or being a network. Things I can visualise a networking meeting when lots of people coming through, and you've got lots of different types of salespeople, and you've got the salespeople who are always there, always hungry, always after it, and I like being able to rise above it, because actually I can talk to people, I can tell them about my product, and I don't mind if they don't buy from me, because I know I've got a great product. I know enough people will buy from me to make my business grow, and it just means that I think having that confidence, and it's a knowledge of your product, it's the enthusiasm, and it's the passion about your product, and it's the ability to help people build relationships, all those things we talked about, and it takes the pressure off. Sales is a very pressurised environment, and it churns staff ridiculously, and it doesn't need to. Staff just need to do that. They need to rise above it, and they just need to talk and educate people about the product, and people will buy more often than not when you do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would disagree in the sense that I've met many a salesperson who, as you say, think they're not very good at sales, and actually they've been some of the best salespeople. So, interesting.
I also think there's a sort of like a fine line. It's a bit like when you look at tennis players. Some have got phenomenal natural ability, and then work some. Others have got less natural ability. Like everybody was sort of said, Pete Sampras had less natural ability than than some of the other players, but he worked so hard that he got to the top. And I suspect it's a similar sort of thing here, that whether you want to call it sales or whether you want to call it relationship building, some people are just really good at developing relationships, and as a result become great salespeople. Other people aren't very good at very much, but with some help, with some understanding, and with some passion and some energy, you can become really, really good at getting results. And so there's somewhere in between, I would suspect.
Well, we now go from one loathsome profession to another loathsome profession, don't we, Vicky?
Yes, I went along to Jessamines in Wheat Hampstead. Jessamines is a small garage that sells second-hand cars. Now, I spoke to Katie McFarlane, who is now the co-owner with her brother, how they overcame the natural reactions of many people to car dealers.
I think as a family business, the most important thing is people come to us because they know us. We've been in the village 20 years this summer, so people know we're here. We haven't just appeared out of nowhere, we're here to stay. Me and my brother have just taken over from my parents. So we're a family business. People come to us because they know they can trust us, and I think that's the key thing for most people. They come to us because they know who we are already.
And 20 years in the business, you must be doing something right.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
So why do second-hand car dealers have such a bad reputation? Are there a lot of sharks out there?
I think there are some. Certainly, yeah, there are people out there who are just out to make money. At the end of the day, every car we sell here goes through our workshop. We put 12 months MOT on any car. It's in our interest. We don't want it to come back and bite us 2 months down the line or give us a bad reputation. A lot of it is about reputation and people passing on, their experiences of us.
So sort of testimonials and referrals is one very, very important way of you getting business.
Yeah, if you upset someone, they're going to tell other people, and it does spiral. You have to be aware that, every car you sell is something you'd be willing to buy yourself.
That's a really interesting sort of position to take, because also you've got a very big mechanic workshop here, so you clearly know about cars, so you know if you were selling a duff one, I guess.
Yeah, and like I said, we offer a 3-month sort of personal word-of-mouth warranty on any vehicle we sell for anything major on it. If there's any issues, we just ask people to come back and talk to us, just come and communicate with us more than anything, and we will always try and put it right.
So it's quite interesting that, it doesn't matter really what sort of business you're in. If you need to have longevity in business, if you're looking for trust, all of those things can give you the reputation that you need, whether you're selling second-hand cars or you're selling houses or you're selling cakes, I guess.
Definitely, yeah. It's all about knowing your customers and building up trust with them.
And how do you get new customers then? How do you attract people in the first place?
To be completely honest, we don't advertise at all. We do no sort of paid advertising bar the Little Wheat Hampstead. There's a Little Wheat Hampstead magazine. Yeah, the pump. We advertise in the pump, and apart from that, we do no advertising. It is all through word of mouth, people driving past and seeing us here. We do have a website. Mum and Dad have moved into the 21st century finally, but most of it is word of mouth and people knowing we're here as much as anything.
And you said family business, and you and your brother have recently taken over.
Yeah.
Had that been planned for a long time?
No, I was an English teacher till this time 2 years ago.
Goodness, and what made you decide to move into motors?
I worked ridiculous hours. I used to work my summers here when I was at school. You know
the ropes.
Yeah, I'd always done it. Mum and Dad were ready to retire, and I'd had enough of teaching by that point. I'd done 2 years, and I was fed up of being sworn at and working 80 hours a week for the same money I'm on here. But when I leave here at 6 o'clock at night, I don't think about work till the next day. I don't take anything home with me.
You haven't got a whole load of books to mark, or the thought of seeing Johnny again in the classroom the next day.
I mean, there's still nights where I go home and worry, and if there's a car that's stuck here, you do worry,
But that's about looking after customers, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's a slightly different thing, and also you're getting probably paid more decently for the hours you put in.
Yeah, it reflects the hours I actually work, and there's no difference in what I take home, but I don't work the extra hours.
Well, I must say, it's very, very nice to not only meet a very decent second-hand car dealer, but also a female second-hand car dealer.
That's true.
You must be one of a few.
That's probably very true.
So if anybody in the West Herts area that's listening to the show wants to buy a second-hand car or get a car mended, how do they find you?
They can call me on 01582 832212 or find us on Wheat Hampstead High Street, and we do have a website as well, which if they type Jessamine Motor Company into Google should come up straight away.
And that was Katie McFarlane from Jessamines in Wheat Hampstead. We've still got Thomas Hamlin Williams with us. Last point she was making about she's one of the few females in her profession. Yet women make very good salespeople.
Absolutely. Women, getting into the difference between men and women, women build phenomenal relationships with people, and my belief that's the key to sales. Makes it an awful difficult environment for I think men in modern sales world to work in. Actually, you have to resist the temptation to go after the quick win, and I think lots of men struggle with that, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just off air, just showing what a great salesperson you were. You were very reluctant to actually talk about your contact details because, of course, it's all about what you're actually saying and the knowledge that you're imparting, of which there's been a lot this evening. But we're going to extract your Twitter handle from you for the benefits of the listeners.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Tom_Umi, and that's OOMI. And obviously, you can find out more about my business on my website, which is umilimited.co.uk.
So that's Tom, T-O-M.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Roma. I think we've just got time for a few programme announcements before the end of the show, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, coming up on the 23rd of June, people might or might not be aware that we've got the annual Retailer of the Year awards, and again this year, the business team will be coming live from the event. So I believe 3 hours of broadcasting that evening.
Uninterrupted
live
yeah.
With all the quirks of live radio. So obviously, if people are coming along, please do come and find us. We want to talk to as many of you as possible. We'll be chatting with nominees, we'll be chatting with winners, so it should be quite an exciting evening. And Vicky, I think you've got some news on another
a little bit,
programme.
yes, a little bit earlier in the week. Next Tuesday, in fact, tomorrow. Is it tomorrow night? No, it's
day after
Tuesday night. Louisa Peacock is going to be doing a show on all aspects of mental health problems. So, how often do you hear that a colleague is off sick with depression or anxiety or stress? Be honest, there are a lot of people out there who have mental health problems. On Tuesday evening, the Daily Telegraph's Louisa Peacock will be debating this very issue on Radio Verulam, confronting the myths around mental health head-on with an expert panel. So please listen in. If you have got anything to say, please tweet at RVOutspoken or email louisa.peacock@radioverulam.com. If you'd like to be kept anonymous, then she's very happy to do that. So please listen in and please join in if you really want to know about mental health.
Yes, do listen in. It's a much under-discussed subject. It's a much under-discussed subject, and I hope you're listening to Louisa's show on Tuesday evening. That's about all we've got time for. So thank you ever so much to Thomas Hamlin-Williams, MD of Sales Marketing Consultant Umi. Is that right? Yeah, okay.
Right, yeah.
Yes, okay, I got it right at last. And all that remains to be said is thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and do tune in again soon.
You've been listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. If there's anything in the show you want to talk to us about, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.